my name is Vladimir, and today we're going to talk about doomed projects. So, first thing I would like to do is to ask you, please raise your hands, those of you who ever had a failed project in their experience. Okay, quite a few of you. Those who didn't raise their hands are very lucky or not very honest with the others. Yeah. So, but regardless, failing is always a very unpleasant experience. And what makes it even more unpleasant is the fact that, let's be honest, quite often we were actually the ones who were responsible for that. But there are other situations where all the circumstances are against you from the very beginning, and everything that can go wrong goes wrong. So, there are a couple of weak points in machine learning projects where problems are most likely to occur. Sometimes business or maybe the stakeholders, they don't understand when exactly do you need to use machine learning and when it is redundant. Or maybe you already developed your system and you need to integrate it into your business processes, and a lot of speakers actually spoke about this problem, and it's huge right now. And finally, it's quite often that people do not understand the limitations of their data and machine learning algorithms, and they try to implement some systems that just cannot be implemented with what they have. So all this can lead to multiple consequences. There are quite a few of them. I'm just going to go through on three of them. So, wrong expectations. So, when somebody comes to you and they think that machine learning will do something magical and you will have this system that will skyrocket your business onto the top, then there can be an accurate problem statement. So, you start developing some system and you just understand that this problem is not what you should be solving right now. It's not the most important problem, and you could do something else. It would bring you much more profit. And this is my least favorite one and the most painful one, misprepared data sets. When you receive the data, it's like millions of samples, but when you start analyzing it, you realize that you just cannot use it because maybe it doesn't contain the information, or there is no way to tell something from what you received. So, suppose for now that you got a proposal to participate in a project, and from the very first glance, it is obvious that it is going to be a huge pain. So, should you turn down that offer? Usually, yes, you should. There is actually a saying that to bring down a wall with your forehead, you either need a really big running start or quite a lot of foreheads. Well, even if you are the most cunning, the most smart data scientist of all time, with tons of experience and a big and competent team to back you up, you will still end up finding yourself in situations when, despite your all best efforts, the wall will not fall just because it wasn't meant to be from the very beginning. Today, however, we are going to talk about such projects when, despite the fact that you do not harbor any illusions regarding the general outcome, it is still worth giving your best shot. As this is a case study, I will provide one example from my experience, and this is sort of a story. The ones that you laugh afterwards, but it's not really funny when you're experiencing it. It was a project, a competition from a large furniture distribution company, and their goal was to find a partner who will be able to build them a system capable of predicting shipments from their 70-plus warehouses for each individual good for the next 4 weeks. The final test was going to be conducted on a closed data set on some subset of some specific goods unknown to the participants. So it's just like an intro to the project. Although we didn't work with them before, they did have a good reputation on the market, actually. And the task itself, it seemed intriguing and promising. They told us that they have a lot of data. And it seemed in general that there was nothing to worry about. And, well, this is at least what we had in our minds when we were preparing for the introductory meeting. But, as it usually is, the reality was not all sunshine and rainbows. And we began to realize that at the moment when we began discussing some more detailed specifics of this project. So first of all, a big data set, in their opinion, was only 2 years history. So just try to imagine if you need to extract a valid trend and seasonality from only 2 iterations for a business that is so heavily reliant on seasons like selling furniture. So, okay. Then there is another problem, that they actually wanted us to predict each specific good. They had hundreds of different items there, and they wanted us to predict them for each specific warehouse. So the dataset became very sparse for one sample. And in such conditions, it is obviously very hard to imagine that you will be able to make accurate predictions, accurate forecasts all the time. And at this moment, maybe some of you are wondering, why the hell did we take this project anyway? It seems like a complete waste of time. But there were actually 3 reasons for that. First of all, it was a huge company, and gaining their trust could open great opportunities for us in the future, for future cooperation. And even though the dataset they gave us at that moment, it wasn't big enough, and it probably had some other problems that we did not know about yet, they had both the time and the resources to fix all this stuff later. And what they actually did need was a reliable partner who will help them do that. And for us to become one, the best opportunity was to make a good impression during this competition. Second, we didn't want to miss out on such an opportunity for our junior specialists to work on a project for a big company with a real-world problem, because there weren't any serious financial obligations, because it was a competition, like a pilot project. It wasn't a big risk. Obviously, it is always better to succeed, but in this case, if they did fail, the consequences would not be severe, nothing bad would happen really. And finally, everything did not look actually all so bad. For this competition, they chose a modified MAPE metric. It's mean average percentage error. It is used to calculate like a percent of error for regression problems. Let's take a look actually at the equation. So here, AI is the sum of total shipments from warehouses, actual shipments from warehouses for the next 4 weeks. And FI is the forecasted sum. N is the number of item warehouse pairs considered for the test. So this is a modified metric. Let's take a look at the original one. You can see there are quite a few differences. First of all, the denominator consists only from AI, and the sum is taken from the whole fraction. There is also, because of that, there is an extra n in the left part of the equation. So actually, those modifications they made, they give us a hint on what is the preferable bias for them, in terms of, do they prefer us to predict a little bit more or a little bit less? Maybe some of you have noticed how they done this. Why is it so? Does anybody see what I'm talking about? No? Okay, let me explain this one. So if we take a look at the original metric, the bottom one, if we predict, for example, 5 items more or 5 items less, the error of a single example, it will not change. It will stay the same. On the other side, if we take a look at the modified metric, if we predict more, then the numerator will stay the same as in the original metric, and the denominator will be larger. So the error will be smaller for this specific example. And as a result, if we usually predict a little bit more often than a little bit less, our final result will be better. And it's not like some wild hack, it's actually more important for them. It was more important for them, so we predict higher, so they do not end up not having enough items in their warehouses. But okay, let's get back to the story. So the final goal was set to reach a 65% efficiency accuracy, which is calculated this way. And it doesn't look too hard, right? It's like only 65%. That's what we thought too. And so we decided to take this challenge. And what should we do next? What was our first step? So actually, first thing we did is we came up with a plan of the whole research and development process, as detailed as we could possibly do it at that moment. And we made sure that the whole team is familiar with that process. For such projects, it is actually crucial. If you want to have at least a small chance of succeeding, you need to have this plan. And we'll talk about this a little bit later. Then the time for actual development came, and the customer provided us the dataset, the full dataset, and we understood that this project is going to bring us a lot more fun than we could ever imagine and hope for. So it all started that the data seemed to be initially prepared for another problem statement. We could tell that because, as I said before, the goal was to predict the shipments from warehouses. But some of the tables with secondary information, it actually contained records for stores, like what arrived in the store, how it was sold, and stuff like that. And there was no possibility to actually link it to the warehouse where this item came from. It seems like bizarre because it is a huge company, but it was the case. So just to illustrate, give you an example, maybe some store ordered a couch from a warehouse. It came to the warehouse. There was some flaw in it, and they sent it back. We couldn't tell for the warehouse that this couch was bad. It was sent back, and then we need to send another one, and we couldn't take this information and use it in our models, in our system, in any way. But it doesn't seem too bad, right? Okay, we didn't also have information about special offers. Well, you all know it's like a big deal when there's like a big sale in the store. Everybody goes and buys a new couch, a new table. Yeah, that was not the case for us. There were actually several aspects for that. And first of them was that they had two types of special offers with completely different origins and ways of distribution. The first one originated from the stores, when a single store just gets a sale and sells one couch with a discount. And there is another situation when the warehouses disposed of extra items they did not need, and they just distributed them through all the stores. And those situations are very different in how the data behaves in this way. So why we couldn't use it is because they had this one big table where they put both the special offers from the warehouses and special offers from stores. They put it all together, and there was no way to distinguish which one came from where. And another problem was that tables actually contain collisions. So one table could contain a record that the item was shipped as part of a special offer, and another one would state that, no, it wasn't. And there was, again, no possibility of telling which one to trust. So, yeah, after spending quite a lot of time, we talked with our client and decided that for the closed test dataset, they will not use the special offer shipments, and from our side we just smoothed them everywhere in the data where we could find them. But again, you all understand that this measure will not solve the whole problem in general. The sad part is that those two aspects were not the worst thing. The dataset contained fictive samples. And those fictive samples came from items that were stored in the warehouse, but they were never actually shipped. But there were records for every day. If an item was stored in the warehouse, it still had a record and just a zero that it was not shipped. When we removed those fictive samples, we ended up losing 80% of our dataset volume. Okay, so it was a huge blow, of course, for the whole project. And just for you to give an understanding, after we did so, 18% of item warehouse pairs, combinations, they were shipped only once per year. Okay, now, I wonder what your reaction would be if somebody tells you, okay, I have this data set, I have 2 samples, I want you to predict for the next 4 weeks, we will sell it or not. You understand me. So when we contacted them, they told us, yeah, we know about this. It's okay. It's not a bug. It's a feature that we have in our system. I said, okay, never mind. As you can imagine, all of this didn't make our development process any easier. We had to scrap our initial plan multiple times. At the end, there was, I think, nothing left from the initial one. But each adjustment we made to the plan, it helped us to keep on our track and to have some understanding of what steps should we take next. Also, we shared all of our actions, all of our discoveries, all of our problems with our customer throughout the whole development process. And this is a very important aspect. I will get back to it closer to the end of the talk. So further development actually didn't bring any significant surprises. There were some, but there wasn't anything big. That was until the end of the development, when the customer sent us the final part of the dataset. It was 2 months prior to the testing dataset, the closed one. And this is where everything got screwed up completely. So I have a graph here, and the highlighted part is that last part of the dataset. When we saw it, we couldn't believe it, because the distribution was absolutely off. It didn't make any sense. When we looked at it in detail, we found out that some of the warehouses, the biggest ones, they barely had any shipments during this whole time. It didn't make any sense, so we contacted our client again. And yeah, they admitted that they extracted the dataset with mistakes, and they will fix all this stuff. Yeah, right. As it is likely to happen. So their specialists were not able to deal with it completely. They were able to recover some, but most of the data was gone for good. And I remind you that this was right before the closed dataset on a time series problem. So at this moment, you just might want to give up and let it go, because it's just like a final nail in the coffin of the whole competition. But we already invested quite a lot, and we decided, okay, we want to finish this. We do not back off, and we will do our best. Let's look at the results and see if we succeeded. No. And actually, no one succeeded, because at the top, there were 7 participants in this competition. And as you can see, not a single one was even close to reach the 65% goal. We were somewhere in the middle, like the 6th one with 46%. Actually, if you think of all the problems that all the teams had during the development, it doesn't sound all too bad, but still not very impressive. So, why am I actually telling you this whole story? It's, from any point of view, it seems like a complete failure. Nobody reached the final goal. And our team wasn't even the best one. We didn't have the best result. The team number 7 did. Well, actually, despite all those facts, the customer chose our team as their consultant to fix all of those problems later. And despite failing the initial task, this was a success for us. This is actually what we wanted to have from this project. As for them, for the client, even though they didn't reach the final goal, they weren't able to start the development of the full-scale system immediately. They got an understanding. They now knew what they need to fix. And they had a rough estimation of what they need to do to fix it. So this was the biggest value for them. The question is, why did they pick us? There was a team number 7 who had better results, and I think some other one. Well, there was a lot of specifics for this project, and the team made a lot of steps in order to impress them. I won't go into a lot of detail for this project. I will just go through a list of, how do you say it, not actions, processes that we have developed for ourselves through trial and error and a lot of mistakes in order to provide the best experience for the customer. It is possible for each specific project. First of all, you need to keep in touch through all the development. You have to give intermediate results. Share your concerns, everything you find in the data that seems interesting to you, and maybe consult them, ask them for help. They will see that you're engaged and that you're working. You are trying to do your best. Then, if something is wrong, don't just tell, okay, this dataset is bullshit. I won't work with it. Try to find ways to solve those problems, to avoid those errors or to fix them in the future. The best thing, the most valuable thing you can provide to your customer, to your client, or maybe to your stakeholder, it doesn't really matter, is a transparent and honest view on the whole situation. Don't be afraid to tell, okay, something went wrong. If we go further like so, we will end up failing the whole project. Give them intermediate results, as I said before, and if something goes wrong in the end, it won't be such a big surprise and very unpleasant surprise to them. They will already be ready, they will be prepared, and therefore you will be able to keep your relationship with them. Of course, if your results are bad, if, for example, for a competition, if your results are much worse than others, or if it's just you're the single vendor, if the results are just bad, it might cross out all of the points you might have earned during the whole development process. And this is where, actually, as I said before, plan is very important. It will help you to manage your resources and will provide you with the confidence of what you should do right now, at this moment. Otherwise, you are very likely to end up solving distinct problems without actually getting any closer to the final goal. And one thing that is forgotten quite a lot of times, the final report. So if you just provide the final results, okay, so the customer sees the final numbers, they may be okay, they may be bad, but he cannot comprehend and therefore he cannot appreciate all the work that you have done. Those are just numbers that he can see. And even if you give some cool presentation, they might not remember all of the important details that you spoken during this final call. So having a final report where you write all of the important aspects, details, problems, etc., that you stumble upon is very important, so they can give a more thorough view later, appreciate what you have done, and maybe become your partner later. As a final point I want to make from this list, it is a very obvious one, but also maybe not the most important one, but it is keeping your positive attitude for you and your team. As soon as you start doubting yourself, as soon as you start having pessimistic thoughts and maybe we shouldn't do it or something like that, you will be on your way to become team number 4, the one that had 22%. I am quite sure that they weren't some guys who didn't know what they were doing. They probably just gave up when they stumbled on all those problems. I don't know exactly, but probably. Well, as I said before, if it is a competition or if it's like a single project for you specifically, a couple of percents will hardly make any difference. If you give a very interpretable and detailed result, you will be able to keep a good relationship with your customer even if you do fail. If it's not, obviously, if it wasn't you who screwed up. Yeah. So the way you present yourself, your results, your progress, it will define your future relationship in an otherwise very questionable situation. So now I hope that if you do have an opportunity and you have to choose whether to participate in a questionable project or not, you will consider different options because sometimes it is worth it. And if you do end up engaged in a doomed project, maybe even as a result of taking those risks, like we did in this project, you won't be all pessimistic about that and you will be able to turn the tables on your side one way or another. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, I will be glad to answer them right now or later in the break. Thank you.